Hi everyone, today I'm going to give you 10 top tips on how to get the most out of your Blackmagic camera app on your iOS devices. In doing so, I'm going to give you the tip, how they work, and what the benefit of these tips are. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Tip number 1 is to make sure you turn your storage and battery indicators on so they appear on your main screen. Now in order to do this, you'll see from the bottom left, we've got the histogram. On the bottom right, we've got the audio meter. In between, we have nothing at the moment. In the top right, on the right hand side of the 4K resolution symbol, we also have nothing at the moment. So we go into settings at the bottom right of the menu. We then scroll down until we get to monitor. Now at the bottom of the monitor menu, we have display battery indicator. Turn that on. 2 options above, we have display storage status. So we're going to turn that on as well. Now when we go back into camera at the top right, we'll see next to the 4K resolution symbol at the top right, we've got our percentage of battery left. Now in between our histogram and our audio meter at the bottom, we have our storage level there. Now the benefit of this is simply that when you're filmmaking, it's very easy when you've got a lot of hats that you're wearing, you're directing, you've written it, you're looking at the performances, perhaps you're a one-man band and you're even doing the lighting yourself. It's very easy to forget about your storage and your battery power. So in having your storage indicator on, it will warn you when you're running out of storage so you know to either offload some footage or whether you just need to simply stop, review it, delete some that weren't working for you, and then getting back on with filming. And when the battery gets low and you get a warning, you can simply make sure that you put in a power bank, plug it in so that your battery is powered up for the rest of your shoot. Tip number 2 is to use the crosshairs that will level your shots. Now to bring up these leveling crosshairs, we want to go to our overlays. The overlays can be found above the record button right at the top of the options. So press on that. And then where we have the grid guide, which is 3 options down, which you can see the dot is on because I'm currently using the rule of thirds grid guide, tap on that. And we have a variety of options that have come to us. Now the leveling crosshairs are just one option below the grid guide. So we press on that and we now have these crosshairs. Now when they're blue, whether it's vertical or horizontal, that means that you're level and correct. So you want to make sure both of those are correct. So to do that, you can then move the camera tilting up or down until you get that crosshairs level. And now you can see we've got both those crosshairs level because they're blue. When they're white, they're not level. When they're blue, they are. The benefit of using this feature is to make sure that you don't have shots that come back to you slightly wonky, meaning you'll have to crop in, lose some of the shot, and then you're going to end up having to rotate those shots slightly to make up for the fact that the shot wasn't quite level. I've had this happen a couple of times before when I haven't used the crosshairs, so I always use it now as it's a really helpful tool to make sure you get a nice smooth post-production process. Tip number 3 is to make sure that your shutter angle measurement is set to the angle, not shutter speed. Now if you look at the top left of the screen, you'll see that shutter speed has been set to a speed, so it's 1/50. That's because my frames per second I would normally have at 25 frames per second, doubling that into my shutter speed. So I have the shutter speed at 150. But to make sure that we have this set correctly all the time, we're going to go into settings at the bottom right again. Going to go into camera, and then we have in the middle here, you can see shutter measurement. Now you've got speed at the moment, but if you click on that, you can then see we've got angle or speed. You want to keep it at angle. Then we go back into camera. You can now see that the shutter angle has been set as 180 degrees instead of the speed of 1/50. But when you have your shutter angle set to an angle of degrees rather than a shutter speed, it means that you'll always have your shutter speed doubled over your frames per second. So you don't ever have to change your shutter angle, which is what you want in general for a smoother playback and smoother motion blur. Tip number 4, and this is a big one, is to lock your shutter speed. Now currently you can see that my shutter speed is not locked. At the moment, because of that, I have automatic exposure AE and automatic focus AF above the focus reticule here. Now, as I move that around, that will change the exposure slightly, and if you've got high contrast situation, you'll see it change dramatically. Now you want to lock that shutter speed, and in doing so, we press on it. We want to bring it to 180 degrees so that we have the correct shutter speed matching with our frames per second. And then you got the padlock at the top right here above the dial. So if we hold on that, it is now locked. When it is blue and the padlock is closed, it's locked. So if we tap on the main screen, we are only getting the autofocus reticule now. Now the benefit of this is twofold. It means you're not changing the exposure at the same time as autofocus, so it separates those two things automatically. The second benefit of this is that whilst you lock your shutter speed, you can then change the ISO independently, so you can have manual control of that ISO. Unfortunately, you still can't have an auto ISO and the shutter speed locked, but I still think this is a huge benefit. Tip number 5 is when you go to your media tab and you're looking at all the shots you've just filmed, under sort by, change that option to date and time. Now to do this, you go into media, which is on the right hand side here. And then in the top right, you've got a few options here. The second to right one next to the iCloud or the Blackmagic cloud, you press on that with the arrow pointing down. And that'll give you different options as to how your clips are presented to you. So at first, it will be on scene and shot, which means that the oldest clips you shot will be up first at the top of your list of clips, which is really annoying when you're looking through and you're against the time. Now, if you change this to date and time, you'll find that all your latest clips will be right at the top and the first things that you see. That will save you a lot of time and energy. Tip number 6 is to make sure you lock your camera orientation. Now to stop the issue of when you want to film vertically with a horizontal locked camera angle, you actually just need to go into settings. Then under camera, which you can see here, you just go to the bottom of that menu and second to bottom is lock orientation. Turn that on, go back into camera, and now even when you move the camera itself vertically, it will stay horizontal. So you don't now have that flipping, which is really annoying to say the least. And you can do that again if you want to keep it vertical by going into settings, go to camera, turn lock orientation off, change that to vertical, go into settings, go down to camera, lock it, go back to camera again, and now again, but in vertical, whichever way you move the camera, it will stay in that orientation. The benefit of this is to make sure that when you're moving your phone around, perhaps you're going from shot to shot, that your phone doesn't start flipping from horizontal to vertical, and then you're having to sort it all out whilst you're shooting and trying to get a take against the time. I know as a one-man band that when you're moving around, you've got all these different hats on that you're thinking about, that when you change the camera angle, move it to a different location or a different room, you can then end up having that phone flipping whilst you're in vertical to horizontal, and it's really annoying. Tip number 7 is if you're using the zebra stripes for your exposure measurements, make sure you get the right range of percentage when you're exposing. Now to see the zebra stripes, you want to go a few options above the record button here on the right hand side to bring up the overlays menu. So if we tap on that, at the top we can see a circle with stripes in. That is our zebra stripes for exposure. So if we tap on that to turn it on again. Now the percentage here represents at what point does the zebra stripes kick in. So for example, if you have it at 75%, it kicks in slightly earlier in the exposure, so you're seeing more of what could be or is overexposed. Now if you bring it up to 80, you can see that the lines start to disappear slightly. Bring it to 85, even more so, 90, even more so, all the way up to 100, we're not seeing anything overexposing really, apart from a couple of tiny bits right around the edges of this star. Now the issue with that is if you have it at 100%, you're not really seeing everything that could be overexposed. Whereas if you have it at its lowest at 75, you may be seeing bits that don't necessarily need to be seen as they're not that overexposed and you're still keeping detail. So for me, you want to keep the benchmark of this at about 80 to 85%, depending on what kind of lighting conditions you're working in. The big benefit from this, of course, is it helps you not overexpose or underexpose your shots. Now that may change depending on the lighting conditions, so you can adjust that percentage accordingly, but generally I would say keeping it between 80 and 85% for your zebra stripes will allow you to get the best exposure for most situations possible. When you're filmmaking, sometimes you want to see the whole screen without the clutter of the timer and your ISO, your white balance, everything on screen. So simply take your finger, put it on the screen and swipe it up. That'll get rid of all of the main details that are on your screen. The right side will remain of all the recording button and the menu and that kind of thing, and then you simply swipe down to bring them back. The second part of this is when you're looking through your media, you don't need to tap into your media files individually, come out and go into the next one. You can simply swipe right, swipe left, go from file to file, and that'll save you a lot of time in the long run. Tip number 9 is to do with the focus on your Blackmagic camera app. Now for me, I actually really don't like the current focus system on the Blackmagic camera app. It's very, very sticky, so when you're trying to do a manual focus pull, it's pretty much impossible because you have to keep flicking again and again to do it, which means it won't be very accurate either whilst you're moving that manual focus tool. Also, you can't create a automatic focus pull, which you can do in Filmic Pro, Cinema P3, Beastcam, and I'm sure there are a range of other apps as well that do it. But there is one way to do a focus pull currently. So to do this, you've got the focus reticule. So you can have the focus on the red bauble here, for example, as a shallow depth of field. And if you want to move it to the blue bauble in the background, which is here, then you can just simply press on the focus reticule and that will change the focus there. So you're creating a focus pull, not in the best way, not in the most easy way, but in the best way that Blackmagic currently can. We can then move that around to various points in the shot to create focus pulls. Now, whilst you can't change the speed of this, hopefully they will start implementing proper focus tools that we have in other apps soon, but it does give you one option at least to create a focus pull very simply. Tip number 10 is that you can actually change the lenses that you're using whilst filming in one take. So you can actually change from a wide angle to a telephoto to an ultra wide, all within one single take. So you just stay in camera, hit record, and then you go to lens, and you simply change the lens to whichever style of lens you want. Now you'd have telephoto lens, etc. if you've got a more newer phone than I have, but you can change this during a take, which is what a lot of people find handy. A lot of people use this in their filmmaking and find it very useful. So if you want to change the lenses whilst you're filmmaking, this is an option in the Blackmagic camera app that not all apps have. Now, if you're really enjoying the Blackmagic camera app and you want to learn everything there is to know about it, then do check out my full tutorial right here, right now. It explains just about every single detail of this app to get you started and on your way to making professional smartphone filmmaking footage. See you on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.